Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Monday night edition of the People Show. I'm your host, Mark Wallace, and your facilitator. Thank you very much for being here on the program. Uh, we are having some problems with the Twitter connection, so if you're having an issue going on, please go on to YouTube or Facebook, and you can get us there. And we'll continue. I will not support X on Twitter for obvious reasons. But I want to welcome you to the program tonight. We have much that we need to be talking about and that we're going to talk about. I'm excited about what has happened over the last week. Kamala Harris, who was nominated and endorsed by the President of the United States, which he has the political and the lawful right to do so, despite the ignorance of some others who don't understand a political process. This is a political decision that they have every right to make, and the delegates have the right to support whatever candidate they want to support. So for those who want to either pretend that they don't understand the process or not know the process, but if they don't know the process, that is the process, the political process. So that's why they have these things in the past that were called brokered conventions or open conventions, such as if in fact Donald Trump, the alleged assassination of Donald Trump, if in fact he was assassinated, because at that time he had not announced a vice president running mate. All right. So he had announced a running mate at the time. So if in fact he had been assassinated, it would have been called an open convention. And then at that point, during the convention, they would have had candidates that would have either pledged or would be vying for the presidency, the nomination of the president, and they would have to then nominate a president, and the delegates would have to support whatever those candidates or the nominations, or I'm sorry, not the nominations, but the candidates that would be vying for to become the nominee. That is a political process, and the delegates have the right to vote whatever way they want to vote with their delegate vote. That's what delegates are. That's why they run to become a delegate, so that they can have a voice in the process of deciding for the people and for their particular party a nominee. That's the process. Now, all of this gaslighting and all of this disinformation and misinformation that is being put out on the other side, simply because they don't have any substance to offer in terms of public policies that are going to be ideas for the improvement of the lives of the average working person. In particular, policies that will impact very underserved communities. So the only thing that they have to use is gaslighting and misinformation and untruths, which we are going to talk about tonight. First, I want to talk about something that is really important, and I probably should have had it sent over so that I could post it, but I will, instead of posting it, I'm going to read it because I think it's very important. On tomorrow night at the New Mount Pilgrim Church at 4301 West Washington Boulevard on the west side of Chicago, where Pastor Marshall Hatch is the senior pastor there. There is going to be a Remembering Sonia Massey rally. You all remember the woman or the young woman who was murdered. I guess I have to say allegedly murdered by a police or sheriff in Springfield who had called for help because she thought she saw someone prowling around her property. She called for help. She ends up being shot in the face by a sheriff or police who had worked for 6 different police departments in the last 3 years and also had problems while he was in the military. He has been discharged, fired from his job, and also has been charged with first-degree murder of that young black woman's life. Excuse me. So, I'm sorry. Give me a minute. I lost my voice last week. It's coming back, but I'm still having a little bit of a struggle. So sorry about that. So at any rate, we this police officer, I don't even want to call him an officer. He doesn't deserve to be called an officer because he is certainly not an officer. But he had no business being on the police department. I'm trying to understand, and of course, this is all going to be found out. But again, tomorrow night, they're asking, in particularly, and I'm asking for men. This is the National Action Network, Ben Crump Law, and the Leadership Network, Remembering Sonia Massey rally tomorrow night, Tuesday night, July 30th at 6 p.m. 6 p.m., New Mount Pilgrim Church, 4301 West Washington Boulevard on the west side of Chicago. I'm asking for you to please spread the information, and black men, let's show up in real numbers. Let's show up in real numbers tomorrow night to show our support for our women, for our daughters, for our nieces, granddaughters, for our friends' daughters. This violence that is being perpetrated disproportionately on black women here in Chicago and around Cook County, around Illinois, and around the country for that matter. This is an epidemic. This is a state of an emergency, and we need to call upon our local, state, and federal officials and public officials that this needs to have an acute attention to addressing why black women are disproportionately being attacked and victims of crimes at disproportionate rates. It is either that black women are discounted and are not important, so that people believe that it's a low risk crime, that nobody's going to spend or invest any real resources in protecting our women. Black men, we need to show up in the remembrance of Sonia Massey, but calling attention to this critical problem that we have, that black women are under attack. In Chicago, black women are 16% of the population, but they are 30% victims of all crimes. And that's not just for this year, that is going back for the last 25 years. There was an acute analysis done of all police reports in Chicago for 25 years, and they found year after year after year that Black women were disproportionately the victims of all crimes higher than any other group. So we've got to stand up and we've got to say something has to be done to protect our women like other groups are being protected. So tomorrow night, I'm asking for those of you who are watching, those of you who are listening, please spread the information. You can go to my Facebook page, the flyers on my Facebook page there. You can download it and you can share it on your social media outlets or with other people that you know. Share it to your Black male friends or your brothers or your fathers and ask them to come out tomorrow night at 6 o'clock at the New Mount Pilgrim Church at 4301 West Washington Boulevard on the west side of Chicago at 6 o'clock. Meet us there. Meet us there tomorrow night. There's been so much chaos that has been out over these last 7 days because a week ago yesterday, President Biden relented and decided, because there was this great call for him to resign. Now, I was not in favor of that. I was very upset about it, very upset about the way my party, the Democratic Party, or the party that I belong to, not a loyalist, but the party that I belong to. And I belong to that party because it is the party that has done the most that benefits the lives of Black people down through the years. The Federal Housing Authority was created under Democratic leadership. FHA, which allows for people to be able to purchase a home, and the government guarantees banks that gives people the opportunity to purchase a home with lower down payments. Before the Federal Housing Authority existed, you needed to have 20% to purchase a home. That means that most Black people would not have been able to afford a home. The Veterans Administration was a Democratic initiative that Republicans voted against. Social Security was a Democratic initiative that Republicans voted against, did not support. Medicare and Medicaid are Democratic initiatives that Republicans did not support. The Dr. King holiday is a holiday that Republicans did not support, even though Ronald Reagan signed it into law. He did not want the holiday. He opposed it. So just because a Republican president may have signed something into law does not mean they supported it. But these are initiatives that our communities have benefited from. These were all created by Democratic leadership. And we can go on and on and on and on. And I'm going to talk about the most recent policies under this administration in the last 3.5 years that were proposed by Democrats, supported by Democrats, rejected by Republicans, but Republicans are benefiting from it all across the country. That's why I am a registered Democrat, and that's why I challenge and support these democratic values. Doesn't mean that I'm a loyalist. It simply means that I support those values that will enhance and create opportunities for our communities. Now, the one thing that I'm not going to do is I'm not going to get into the name calling that I've heard over plenty of times, and I may have been guilty of it myself out of frustration. But I'm not going to get into that, because what's important to me is that you are informed and that you are educated with the facts. Facts that you can go and verify, because I've heard information or I've heard misinformation that you can't verify, such as one clip that from a rally that Donald Trump did in, I believe it was in North Carolina, South Carolina, somewhere. I'll pull it up. That said that Vice President Kamala Harris was a tie-breaking vote to cut $237 billion from Medicare. It never happened. False. Now, Vice President Kamala Harris is the only vice president who did vote and has the most tie-breaking vote than any other vice president in the history. More than 33 times she had to vote because Republicans rejected any policies going forward. And I'm going to go through those policies. Now, what I'm not going to do is I'm not going to go through the 922-page manifesto of the Project 2025 that Donald Trump has said that he doesn't know anything about. I believe that he doesn't, because he doesn't read much. But he certainly, under no circumstances, can he say that the people who crafted it. Now, this Project 2025 document has been around for a long time, more than a year, more than in a year and a half that it's been around. We just have not been talking about it. And now that it's getting close to the election, we've been talking about it, because I don't think that the Republicans, and certainly the Heritage Foundation, which is a conservative think tank that Donald Trump himself largely relied upon during his administration, and the people who are a part of that, who are intricately a part of it, and they have all these other organizations that they say they're a part of it, including an organization that they say is the Frederick Douglass organization that is, it has two people, one who's a comedian, and the other, I'm not sure what he does, that are responsible for that particular organization. But what I will talk about is his agenda that's on his website, called Agenda 47. And I heard on a previous program some misinformation about someone who supports that agenda, but they fail to give you, because I believe in reading and making sure that you get the facts. And so when I went to read it, rather than somebody just going down the list that's listed and not reading the substance of the agenda, well, I read the substance of the agenda. And I'm not going to attest that Project 2025 is Donald Trump's agenda, because it's not on his website. He says he doesn't know anything about it, and he says that even some things there that he opposes that are far too extreme. Now, I'm not sure how you don't know anything about it, but you oppose things that are on there that are far too extreme. I'm not quite sure about how that lines up. By the way, I do not have a call-in number, but we're going to get a call-in number. We're going to get one so that I can talk to the callers. So we're going to figure it out. I'm going to figure it out this week to figure out how I can talk to you, because I do want to talk to the listeners. I want to talk to the callers. But I'm going to read You can go on Facebook and you can post your comments in the chat. I will definitely read those in the chat, and those of you who support or don't support, I, but what you will get is you will get facts that you can verify. You will, and when I tell you that it's my opinion, but my opinion is going to be based on a fact. We may differ on that opinion, but I do not believe, regardless of what party affiliation that I am, at being a loyalist and putting out information or misinformation or disinformation just because to try and make the other side look bad. Now, what I'm interested in is providing you with information as to why I believe and why I support and why I believe for our community that this is the best way for us to support. And then we have to also challenge the Democratic Party to go further to making sure that equity is representative for our communities in those areas from education to economics. That's what I fundamentally believe. And I have challenged those who support Republicans and support that ideology. I have challenged, and I continue to challenge, to bring one policy, not your opinion, a policy that shows a policy that the Republicans have proposed and the policy that they have advocated and passed that benefits the average working person and the average Black person in this country. One policy in the last 50 years. I have challenged those to do it. And I also heard that there are those, and it's really the same talking heads, that say that Kamala Harris said or refused to say that she was not going to do something for Black people. Let me give you a little bit of an education and a little bit of history that you can go. When Kamala Harris, Vice President Kamala Harris, was then Senator Kamala Harris, proposed legislation that was race-based on helping Black students to eliminate student debt. They passed the policy, but the policy was challenged in court, and the federal courts rejected it because you cannot have policy that is race-based. So what Vice President Kamala Harris did in current policy, which I'm going to go through that with you tonight, she took those lessons and they drafted the policy that was not race-based, but how they drafted the policy is that 97% or close to that number of all Black college students use Pell Grants to go to college, to help to pay for college. What Vice President Kamala Harris did was to include Pell Grants in the policy that President Biden put into place to reduce student loan debt. As a result of that, disproportionately, Black students will be benefited as a result of that crafting the policy that way. That's just one of those things that Vice President Kamala Harris crafted in the bill that's helping Black students. She also was very integral in drafting and getting the president on board to provide more than $16.5 billion to HBCUs, not minority, not HSIs, Hispanic served institutions, which means they only need to have 25% enrollment of Hispanics in that university in order to qualify for those grants. These are HBCUs, $16.5 billion, more than any other presidential administration in the history of the country. Crafted by Vice President Harris. So the idea of someone saying that Vice President Harris has not and will not do anything for Black people is just categorically not true. Period. But let's go through Agenda 47. Here's Agenda 47 that they clearly left out. I'm not going to read off the taglines. I'm going to give you the substance of what it says. It's first, he promises that he will carry out the largest domestic deportation in history. He will also ask for the death sentence for anyone convicted of human trafficking. He will close the Department of Education and return all education standards for the states to decide. Now, let me just stop there and put a pin in that. The reason why federal protection and federal legislation is important, especially on our public commons, is because we used to have nothing but states' rights. And because we had states' rights, states put into law that it was lawful in the South to own people as property. It was called enslavement. When the Emancipation Proclamation was signed into law on September the 22nd, 1862, and it went into law on September 1st of 1863. There were states in Galveston, Texas, state of Texas, that did not free those slaves, though they were free, for 2 years, 2.5 years. Well, the federal government had to step in to protect the rights of people from states' law or from states' rights. To go to Galveston, Texas, to enforce the law and to free those people who had been free for 2.5 years. That's thusly is why we have a federal holiday called Juneteenth. It was June 19th, 1865. So that's why it's important for you to understand that analogy. He would put prayer back into school. I'm not opposed to prayer in school. He would put prayer back into school. I doubt very seriously that that would happen. He will criminalize any race-based advantage programs. Any race-based advantage program. What does that mean? That means that students who are benefiting from the reduction of their student loans, those programs will be rolled back. Any programs that are helping poor people, which Black people participate in those programs would be rolled back. This is in the substance. You can go to his page and read them on Agenda 47. Now, you weren't getting this information. You were getting the taglines. But you weren't getting the substance. I'm going to give you the substance so that you can go back and you can verify the information if you choose to do so. But this is a part of their agenda. So I'm just going to go through it. I had to dissect all of this and put this together in a narrative so you would see it. He would put prayer back into school. He would criminalize any race-based advantage programs. He will He will end the Affordable Care Act. There are more than 80 million people who now have health insurance that did not have health insurance before the Affordable Care Act. So he will take away any type of health coverage for largely poor people who now have access to health care. All in Agenda 47. Forget about this point, Project 2025, because I'm going to give you a clip and a narrative about what Project 2025 is. He will ban gender affirming care for adults, and he will ban any federal dollars from going towards any gender affirming care, which means anyone with government provided health care will no longer be able to access gender affirming care except for Viagra and Cialis. Those still will be available. He will propose a constitutional amendment that will give term limits to Congress members. He will deploy the Department of Justice to investigate the Biden crime family and any of his adversaries or political rivals. He would immediately pardon all of the January 6th convicted felons, and he will create a task force to investigate anyone who arrested, charged, or imprisoned a January 6er. He will increase the penalties for underage criminal offenders, strengthen immunity for police officers, and deploy the National Guard to patrol woke cities. He is proposing that police officers become 100% immune. So the police officer who just shot and killed Sonia Massey, a black woman in Springfield, Illinois, under the Trump agenda, would be immune from prosecution. This is not Project 25. This is Agenda 47 on the Donald Trump website. He will increase the penalties for underage criminal offenders, strengthen immunity for police officers, and deploy the National Guard to patrol woke cities. On day one, he will reassess our participation in NATO and says that every European country needs to pay the United States for protection. He will also restore the wonderful travel ban for Muslims coming to America. He will build freedom cities. This is 10 new cities built on federal land. He will award them to areas with the best development proposal, and he will prioritize moving young families to these freedom cities. He will kill all electric vehicles and electric vehicle legislation, seeking to replace that with the development of a flying car, which he says on his page that he believes that we could create a car that will vertically take off into midair. He will remove all of the limits on American natural gas exports and drill, baby drill, that's on his website, for oil domestically. Now, I might add to you, we are producing and have produced more oil under this administration in the past 3.5 years than any other administration. Now, the president doesn't have much influence at all on gas prices. What you see happening in gas prices is the Saudis and APAC are deciding to manipulate gas prices by cutting production so that gas prices can go up so that they can try and influence the election by the increasing of gases, because they know that most people have no idea that the president doesn't have anything to do with the pricing of gas going up. Now, we should absolutely continue, and we should stop exporting oil. If we did a national ban on exporting oil, we would be able to have a better control on gas. But so let's continue on. He will kill the electric vehicles. I want to make sure that I think I'm all right. He will remove all of the limits on American natural gas exports and drill, baby, drill oil domestically. He will impose a tariff of up to 60% on Chinese imports. Now, you think that your taxes are high now. You think that you're paying more. Allow for him to do this and see what you and I would have to pay in order to pay for those tariffs, because that comes back on us on the cost of the goods. He will extend the 2017 tax cuts, which were close to $6 trillion, and drop the corporate tax rate from 21% to 15%. He will push Congress to pass legislation that would give every American the right to conceal carry anywhere at any time. And he will revoke any gun restrictions or legislation that seeks to inhibit people's ability to own guns, which was passed, in the last several years. He will demand Europe pay back all the money we gave Ukraine, and then will use all of that money to recruit for American military, and he will take billions and billions of dollars from private universities, endowments by taxing, fining, and suing the universities. Now, in his manifesto or in his agenda, he names specifically Harvard University in that policy proposal. And then he will use the money to create an American Academy, which is a free online college that will be free of all wokeness. This is the language that they're using. This is how they use code language that is intended for a certain group of people. That he will force employers to recognize as a bachelor's degree equivalent. There is your project or your Agenda 47. That's what it is. So you go on and you can read past the taglines, past the little subtitles of what they are, read into what those policies are, then you will then know what his policies are. So, I mean, there are some groups that are trying to suggest that there's going to be this wave of black people voting for Donald Trump. This is the sort of tactic, if you want to call it a tactic, that they have used since Lee Atwater named it as his goal when he was the chairman of the Republican convention in 1992, and he used it every year up until the time that he died in every election, that we're going to get 20%. And this is a guy who used all kinds and admitted it, that he used these code language that was to attack black people in his policies or his agenda for the Republican Party. And so he used that as though he's going to get 25% of black men to support the Republican Party. Well, it has never worked. And there has never been they have never gotten more than 12% of black men to vote. Black men that do vote, black men that have participated, tend to vote for Democratic or progressive policies. Black men are not stupid to understand where the best representation for their interests. Now, there is enough blame on both sides in terms of trying how to message to black men that I think that the Democratic Party comes up real short on, and using, these same, what I call Democratic elitists like James Carville and David Axelrod to message to black men. Look, the fact is that black men don't get their information from the mainstream news, and black men are not necessarily focused on a candidate or a party, because when you talk to them about a candidate or a party, then you will hear huge critique from them. But when you start talking about the issues that impact black men and start talking about how we're going to address those issues, that's when you get black men to really pay attention to you, because now you see them and you understand what their thoughts, what their feelings, and what their frustrations are, and what's important to them. So I think the Democratic Party needs to do a much better job at partnering with those trusted voices, to making sure that people that black men trust in the areas where they live, providing them with the resources to be able to go out and to be able to explain to black men which policies that will be going forward, and which policies have been passed by this current administration and by the agenda going forth of what would now be the Harris administration going forward. And I want to talk about some of those and just remind us. I want to remind us of what has come out of these policies of the Biden administration. I'm going to talk about some of the investments that have come to that's coming to the state of Illinois that's going to impact black communities. United States Treasury Department released the report. You can get this information. It's easily accessible and available for you to go and to verify. And the reason I continue to say that, because I want you to know that when I'm coming to you, whether you agree with me on a candidate or a party, what we cannot dispute are the facts. And I believe that I earn your trust that way by giving you the information that you can then go and you can verify that information to be true or to be false. But I am not going to give you false information. False information to try to win you over is deceptive and dangerous. That is not going to be the group that I'm going to be a part of. I want to be a part of the group that educates us, to empower us, to strengthen ourselves, to become more collective, that we can strengthen ourselves to make sure that we make whatever the party is that wants for our support to deliver for our communities. In this administration, the Biden-Harris administration, over the past 3.5 years, have delivered unmatched to any administration, not the Obama administration, not the Clinton administration, not the Carter administration, not the Johnson administration, not the Bush administration, not the Reagan administration, not the Eisenhower administration. None of those administrations has delivered what this administration, which I was extraordinarily But surprised at, very surprised, but happy at what this administration was able to deliver, and in the policies, how those policies are benefiting the lives of Black people. So I know that, again, many of us are not going to take the time and don't have the time, because you got to raise children, you got to get them ready for school or camp or whatever, you got to go to work, you got to come home, you got to cook, and then at some point you got to find a little time to do it. Well, for those of us who took on these tasks, then it's our responsibility to make sure that we provide you with the information so that you can easily find it. Now, somebody, Shelby Williams, is asking, you can go on, look for Donald Trump, go to donaldtrump.com. You can just Google it, Agenda 47. It will come up. You can go on his page and you can read all of his agenda. I gave you a narrative, but I put together a narrative of his agenda. But you can go through and read all of his agenda, and you will find all of which I just read to you, which I'm going to continue to share, because there are some people who, look and view me at different times. I'll be doing more programs throughout the week that you'll be able to get more information. You can go on, again, on YouTube, and you can relook at the program, or you can go on iHeartRadio and relook at the program, or Apple Podcasts. I'm here on intellectualradio.com every Monday night. I will have a conversation and see if there's some other time that we might be able to book because of the election. We're in the stretch for the next 99 days. 99 days until election, even shorter for those of us who will be voting either by mail-in ballot or voting early. So we're 99 days to November the 5th. So now, over the past 3.5 years, President Biden and Vice President, this is the report coming from the Department of Treasury that is breaking down what policies and how these policies are impacting the lives of Black people in this country. Over the past 3 years, for those people who like to say that Kamala Harris hasn't done anything, Kamala Harris has been intricately involved in legislation and the crafting of legislation more than any other vice president. So, which makes her even more ready to take on the mantle of being President of the United States, to carry on the mission and carry on these policies. So when I say to support the person that we best have the opportunity to work with, not to have a holy alliance, but the best person that we can push, the best person that we can challenge, and the best person that we can make demands to meet what the demands are for the Black community. Now, once those demands are met on the federal level, we have a responsibility locally to make sure that our local representatives and our state representatives, when those resources come to the state, that our communities are equitably invested in all of those resources, from education to economics, such as what's taking place at the U.S. Steel site. Was just announced last week that the CompuLab will be, has been announced, going on to the old U.S. Steel site, which was going to bring thousands of good-paying jobs. We want to make sure that the governor, we want to make sure that the mayor, we want to make sure that the aldermen and the state reps and the state senators ensure that for our tax subsidies that we are providing, which we should provide, and for those that Black people on the south side of Chicago, I'm calling for Black people to get at least 60% of those jobs to reproduce exactly what they're doing down in Mississippi, in the Golden Triangle. This is the start of the Golden Triangle for the Black community. They have companies to come here. We provide them with the subsidies, but in exchange of those subsidies, in exchange of those tax cuts that they are investing by bringing Black people and men and women, in particular those who are at risk, to train them to be able to carry out those jobs. That's what you and I, on a local level, must be doing. Now, I'm going to give you a little commercial break. I'm asking you to join me and the 10 by 10 to win, because that's what we're going to be doing. Putting pressure on them to deliver the resources, because they're getting the resources. And so now we're going to put pressure on them to make sure that they deliver the resources to our people. This is the real work, not the gaslighting nonsense that goes on. This is the real work that you and I need to participate in. So I'm going to ask you, please text 10x10 to the number 855-909-1385 so that you can join us for the meeting on this Thursday and every Thursday as we continue to build the independent Black voting bloc. That's not just a voting bloc. It is that we advocate to make sure that our people equitably are represented all around the city of Chicago, the county of Cook, and the state of Illinois. Not just on the south side, but on the west side, on the Midwest side, everywhere that we are, that our people are equitably represented. The only way that we are going to make our communities safer is that we have to make our communities richer. And the only way that we're going to make our communities richer is we have to have more people participating in the upward mobility of Chicago. 47% of Black males are unemployed between the ages of 18 and 25 and out of school. That's not sustainable for peace. It's not a recipe that will bring peace. We will not be able to arrest our way to peace. We have to invest our way to peace. And investing in people is how we bring more security and more safety for our communities. I'm definitely going to explain the Golden Triangle. Let me explain what the Golden Triangle is. And I'm certainly going to get to policies that have benefited Black people. The Golden Triangle down in Mississippi, which is the poorest state in the country and in the poorest region of the poorest state, is Activa, it is I'm losing Columbus, and there's one other city. I'm gonna get it because I want to make sure that I get it right. Down in these areas, but I'll get it. The three cities, right? The three counties. There are three counties down in this area, and those three counties lost 24 manufacturers that employed thousands of people over a 11-year period, and those manufacturers went out of business. And so what happened is the three counties got together and did a joint venture because they were going broke. Unemployment was at 20%, reaching 20%. They were having all kinds of problems. Obviously, crime was increasing because there was no resources. So it created this underground economy. So the three counties got together And they hired a headhunter that was stationed, based here in Chicago, by the way, that hired a headhunter to bring them an economic developer. Well, they found this economic developer by the name of Joe Max Higgins, who was based in Arkansas, doing great work there. And they tried to enlist it, this economic developer, brought him to Mississippi, offered him and his team $250,000 plus his team of 6 people to come to Mississippi to help this region, the Golden Triangle. And when they could finally convince him to come, Sara Lee, which was the largest employer in that region, announced that they were closing up shop. 2,500 more jobs in that manufacturer, in that industry, went folded up. 2,500 jobs. So they said to Joe Max Higgins, if you could bring us a movie theater, anything, if you could bring us a movie theater, we would consider your job to be a success. Joe Max Higgins said to them, I can bring the movie theater, but who's going to be able to go to the movie theater when you got 20% unemployment? Nobody's got a job here. But I'm going to build a movie theater. So he went. He was able to bring a movie theater company in. They built a movie theater there. He then took all of those officials in the area, Democrats and Republicans, black and white. They were so desperate that their party affiliation didn't matter. He then took them and he flew them around and showed them and had them to look at all of that land and asked them, well, what is the land? What do you see down there? Most of them said, well, it's just, undeveloped land and swampland. He said, no, that's opportunity down there. And so what he did was he went with his team. They put together a plan, and he went back to them and said, I need X number of dollars. I need roads. I need infrastructure. I need water, utilities, because I'm bringing industry here. And they were, where are we going to get that money from? We don't have that money. We can't do this. And Joe Max Higgins says that he had to get them into the mindset of winning, which we probably have to do with some of our public officials here. Had to get them in a broad mindset of winning. And so after he was able to get through to that, to get them to provide him with the funds to build the roads and to build the infrastructure, Joe Max Higgins goes out and he brings in an advanced manufacturing steel company, an advanced manufacturing truck engine company from Europe that had never done any business in the United States of America, that had almost signed a deal to go to another state. And he also brought in a helicopter manufacturing company to build helicopters for the military. While they were building the plants, they partnered with the community colleges in the area. The community colleges trained the workforce, because part of the deal was, we give you the tax subsidies, you pay for the training, you train the people here in our area, and they get the jobs. No importing people from other areas. So that was the trade-off, that was the deal. So they trained the people while they were building up these plants. Now, mind you, the average 4-person family in that area earned somewhere between $24,000 and $32,000 a year. This is back in 2010. Not that far. When they graduated, when the facilities were up, and the people were ready to take the jobs. Now, the average person earns $60,000 to $112,000 a year. Now I'm going to fast forward to now. That was $6 billion, 6,000 jobs in the first phase. I'm fast forwarding to now. They have surpassed 28,000 jobs, $18 billion in industry. They reduced unemployment from 20% to just over the national average in less than a decade. 60% of the jobs, Black people have 60% of those jobs. The program has been so successful that they have built their own $38 million training facility outside of that, outside of the program, or I'm sorry, from the resources and the revenues that were generated into these locales. In the poorest region of the poorest state, they were able to do this. When I found out about this in 2016, I saw the story on 60 Minutes. I then got in contact with the people down in Mississippi because I wanted to talk with them about it. Joe Max Hagan, I brought him on my program when I was on WVON. I brought him on the program, got in contact with us. We've stayed in touch with each other. I was supposed to go down in, I think it was in 2020, but of course COVID hit and then we weren't able to do it. But we've stayed in contact with each other. This is a program that needs to be duplicated here and other places around the country. This was before Joe Biden was elected. Joe Biden has been elected to office. The CHIPS and Science Act that he's gotten passed, that bill, the Build Back Better, the $1.9 trillion Build Back Better bill that is investing in these states, that attracting manufacturers, more than 47,000 projects around the country are initiated as a result of this. We have one in Kankakee, the electric battery plant. Imagine this, 2,000 jobs. The Trump 47 or Agenda 47 will get rid of all of those and provide those tax cuts to his rich buddies. So those people who got the 2,000 jobs down in Kankakee earning $84,000 to $89,000 as a start for a career in Belvedere, the auto manufacturing plant that was just about to close now is being reinforced because of the $2 billion subsidies that they're getting. 2,500 jobs of people who are going to be earning $90,000 a year. Now, the CompuLab that's going to happen on the southeast side of Chicago. Now, believe me, we need a whole lot more of that to happen on the south side of Chicago and on the west side of Chicago, so that Black families and Black young men and women can participate into these programs and be trained into these programs, so that they're available and they're equipped to take on these jobs earning $90,000, $100,000 a year, $110,000, $120,000 a year. That is a pretty decent living, so they can take care of themselves and their families. They can buy a home and save and take their family on a vacation and not have to rely on underground activity. That's the kind of work of the Democratic Party. That's what's happening in this Democratic administration. That Kamala Harris, Vice President Kamala Harris, with President Joe Biden has gotten done for us and for this country and for our communities. Those are the facts. Those are the facts. Now we need to do a lot more of that. Now we need to make sure that the people here, our state, our local and state officials. So what I need you to do is to join us in that effort. Forget about the gaslighting and the name calling and uh, you know let's look at the facts and let's look at what we can best work with. So I'm going to put it in the chat here and ask and hope that you all join me uh, for more of this, because we are organizing to make this happen. To make this happen for our communities. That's what we have to get on board with. That's why I'm supporting Kamala Harris for president, to continue this mission, not to dismantle as the other side is trying to dismantle, and those people who are frustrated, who are angry and misinformed and confused and being used for maybe their own private interest. I don't know. I have no idea. I don't know. So I can't really say, but I can only say that they're confused, they're misinformed, because they can't deliver any substance. And I've asked for people to deliver substance. Period. So over the past 3 years, 3.5 years, President and Vice President Harris have used the federal government to advance racial justice and equity. This is the report that is coming out of the Department of Treasury. To ensure the promise of America for all communities, including Black Americans across the country. With the support of these efforts, Black Americans are starting new businesses, creating jobs, buying homes, and taking advantage of the increased educational opportunities at historic rates, contributing to a 60% increase, 60% increase in wealth compared to before the pandemic. This wealth creation following the pandemic is helping to drive historically equitable economic recovery, from promoting entrepreneurship and increasing access to home ownership, and delivering the lowest Black unemployment rate, from proving it's possible to reduce child poverty at historic lows, to expanding the access of quality, affordable health care. Now, let's talk about the child tax credit that reduced child poverty in the Black community by more than 50%. Republicans rejected it, voted against it. Joe Manchin voted with the Republicans to block it. Joe Manchin voted with the Republicans to vote against the $15 an hour minimum wage. Republicans rejected it. So all of these increases that you're seeing, realize those were democratically supported and proposed bills. From advancing voting rights and police accountability to ensuring equal access to high quality education with historic funding for historically Black colleges and universities, President Biden and Vice President Harris are committed to investing in the future of Black communities. This is a report that came from the United States Department or Treasury Department, the United States Treasury Department. You can go and get the report yourself. So I'm telling you where you can go get it yourself, so that you can see and you know where you are getting the truth from, and you can trust that. You can trust that the information that you're going to get from this program is going to be accurate, factual information. Now, again, I am not here to suggest that the Democratic Party is a perfect party. There's no such thing. I'm not even here to suggest that they're doing enough. What I am here to suggest is that this is the group of people that you and I, if we organize ourselves at the level that we need to, we can force them to continue and to do more to provide, if you want to call it reparations, but certainly to provide equity for the people in our community that have been passed over for decades. The kinds of legislation that we see now that will continue for decades, if the other party is elected, they will be reversed and they will go away. All of what I'm reading to you, much of it will be cut and reversed and will go away. The growing economic opportunity for Black families and communities through the president's legislative victories, including the American Rescue Plan, the ARP, the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, the CHIPS and Science Act, the Inflation Reduction Act, as well as the president's historic executive orders on racial equity. The Biden-Harris administration ensuring that federal investments through the president's landmark Investing in America agenda are equitably flowing to communities to address long-standing economic inequities that impact people's economic security, health, and safety. And this vision is already delivering results through this administration. Now, let me just give you some examples of that. Let's deal with Illinois, where we are. For those of you who are around the country, I'll go through yours as well if there are other people who are watching from around the country. I know that some of my people from my home state of Florida, and I'll go through what they're getting. Now, this is the Biden-Harris Investing in America. What is coming to Illinois, which is why they were able to do the battery plant down in Kankakee, to do the auto dealer, or I'm sorry, manufacturer in Belvedere, to do the or to announce recently the CompuLab that's going on the U.S. Steel site. We have to keep this going in that direction, not be satisfied, not to, sit back. No, we have to push forward. We have to press even harder. We have to press on those people who are in political office. We have to press the governor. We have to press the mayor. We have to press our state reps. We have to press our state senators. We, the people, have to continue to do that so that our people can continue to rise and stabilize. That is not going to happen with the other party. There is no evidence of it. They can't produce any evidence of it. If they can, tell them to bring it forward. I've been asking for it for years. One, I've been asking for it for years. I've been challenging those people who want to promote the other side for years to bring one policy. Here it is. I was on WVLN for a little over 10 years. I've not been on for, 2 or 3 years, I guess. And I've been doing this podcast for going on 2 years now on intellectualradio.com. Thank you to Earl Winfrey for allowing us the opportunity to be here. And I have continued to challenge people. I've continued to challenge people to provide me with one piece of legislation, just one. And I ask you to do the same thing. If they want for you to support the other side, produce one piece of legislation, not some, hyperlink or, some opinion. Let you go and verify it, or tell me so that I can go and verify it. You have to be able to verify what somebody is alleging or refute it, one or the other. All right, so let me go through this, and then I'm going to refute some things that were said by the about the vice president. And then we're going to go through some other things that they have been able to do that Black people have benefited from as a result of these bills. Coming to Illinois through these pieces of legislation, President Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris are delivering $8.4 billion in private sector commitments and $16.6 billion. Now you can add this up and you'll see how much money is coming through this state. $16.6 billion in public investments in clean energy. So whatever the issue is that's important to you, whether it's environmental, whether it's infrastructure, whatever it is, we're getting those investments. $16.6 billion in public investment in clean energy, infrastructure, and manufacturing under this administration. $2.1 billion in high-speed internet, $11.1 billion in transportation investments in roads and bridges and public transit. Also in the airport, we're announcing that the airport, the South Suburban Airport, the third airport that the FAA has told us 30 years ago, more than 30 years ago, 40 years ago actually now, that we need to build a third airport. 90% of the project is done. We've acquired 90% of the land, including an already small airport that will be expanded in the South region, that will be transformational for the South region. $11.1 billion for that, $2.6 billion in private sector commitments in EVs, which is supporting the electric battery plant downstate. It has reduced our unemployment to its lowest rate, unemployment 4.8%, 455,000 jobs. That number has increased. I don't have the exact number, but that number has increased. $1 billion in clean water. So some projects that spotlights. The Chicago Union Station will receive $94 million across 2 years. Across two projects for the upgrades to its passenger rail platforms. Both projects will add capacity to the station, reduce delays, and prepare Chicago Union Station for the future. If you go down there and take a look at what has happened down there, the city of Chicago has been awarded $144 million to rehabilitate 4 bridges over the Calumet River over on the south side of Chicago. The Department of Energy awarded up to $1 billion to Michigan, Illinois, and Indiana for the Midwest Hydrogen Hub. This hub will produce clean hydrogen from renewable and nuclear energy and natural gas with carbon capture, and it will be used for industry such as steel and glass production, transportation, and power generation. All this means that this money is creating job opportunity. Job opportunity. We need to make sure that our people are paying or benefiting for this. All right. Yes. This is the website. The website is DonaldJTrump.com, Agenda 47. So if you want to go in there, you can read it. Thanks a lot, Shelby. Certainly appreciate that. Let's talk about infrastructure. $15.7 billion in the infrastructure law funding has been announced to Illinois. $15.7 billion, 488 projects, including $11.1 billion for transportation, $6.7 billion for roads and bridges, $2.9 billion for public transit, $494.1 million for airports, $268.6 million for ports and waterways, $1.6 billion for high-speed internet, $982 million for clean water, $337 million to replace toxic lead pipes, $240 which would disproportionately help black families, $239.7 million for pollution cleaning, $1.4 billion for resilience to strengthen communities' readiness um, for climate. The clean energy under the Biden-Harris administration, private companies have announced $8.4 billion in commitments to invest in 21st century industries, including $4.9 billion for clean power projects, $416 million for clean energy manufacturing, $1 billion in public funding has been announced for grants, rebates, and other initiatives to accelerate the deployment of clean energy. So, like if you want to replace your furnace, and let's say you put 90 or 95% efficiencies furnaces in your home or your apartments, you can get rebates back from the gas company. That's what these funds are being given for. This is all coming to Illinois. This is what's coming to Illinois. Now, let me just deal with some of the dispelling of some information that I heard earlier. Again, I want to refrain from, and I know that I have been guilty of it, but I want to refrain from calling people names because it distracts from what's important in getting the information out so that people are informed and better equipped. Because I need for you to be able to trust that the information that you're getting from me is information that you can rely upon, information that you can make informed decisions upon. That's what's important to me, that the information that I provide you equips you in a way that with information that you may not have had, or with information that you need in order for you to make the decision that I believe would be the best decision for our people. See, this is not just for one of us. This is for all of us. We can't operate in silos. We don't have the luxury to operate in silos. Now, let me do this because I don't want to run out of time before the program ends. But so I had to go and I had to do some fact checking myself on some information or disinformation, gaslighting that was put out. And I want to deal with this information. Now, okay. So let's deal with the fact checking where on some things that the other side has suggested in their messaging. Okay, this is fact checking Donald Trump's claim and, of course, somebody else's claim who just went with that because it's obviously obvious that they did not fact check it. They just played clips that reverberated disinformation. Trump's claim about Kamala Harris in his North Carolina rally, in his first campaign rally since President Joe Biden dropped out of the 2024 race, former President Donald Trump attacked his most likely opponent, Vice President Kamala Harris, the presumptive Democratic nominee. He called her, he said, she is a radical left lunatic who will destroy our country. That's his usual tag. Who will destroy our country if she ever gets the chance to get into office. You can usually make that kind of noise when you don't have any substance. Who would destroy our country if she ever gets into the office. News alert, she's already in office as vice president and has been working with the president on implementing these phenomenal policies. Trump criticized Harris's position on multiple policy topics, including immigration, healthcare, and abortion. These were the fact checks, 4 of his claims. As the border czar, Kamala Harris threw open our borders. This is Donald Trump. As the border czar, Kamala Harris threw open our borders and allowed 20 million illegal aliens to stampede into our country. That was false. Here are the facts. These claims that Harris is Biden's border czar in charge of stopping illegal immigration are mostly false. Biden tasked Harris with working alongside officials in Guatemala, El Salvador, and Honduras to address the issues driving people to leave those countries and come to the United States. These issues include economic insecurity, corruption, human rights, and violence. Border security and management are the Homeland Security Secretary's responsibility, not the Vice President's. Also, the United States border isn't open. Physical barriers such as fences, surveillance technology, such as drones, and about 20,000 United States Border Patrol agents help control who and what comes into the United States. Additionally, I'm going to give you this information because I want you to have this. Additionally, immigration officials at the border continue to enforce immigration law. Trump's statement during the June 27 debate that Biden allowed in 18 million people was completely false. CNN did not fact check it. During the Biden administration, immigration officials have encountered immigrants illegally crossing the United States border nearly 10 million times. When accounting for, quote, gotaways, those are people who aren't stopped by border officials, the number rises to about 11.6 million. But encounters don't mean admissions. Encounters represent events, so one person who tries to cross the border twice counts for 2 encounters, also, which are the 11.6 encounters. Also, not everyone encountered is let in. The Department of Homeland Security estimates about 4 million encounters have led to expulsions or removals. About 3.3 million people have been released into the United States to await immigration court hearings under the Biden administration. The Department of Homeland Security data shows about 415,000 children who crossed the border alone were also let in. Kamala Harris co-sponsored Senator Bernie Sanders' $32 trillion plan to take over the entire U.S. health system. This was in response to her so-called cut of $237 billion. That was not true. That another person claimed or repeated that it was, and in fact it was not. In April of 2019, Harris became one of 14 original co-sponsors of the Medicare, when she was a senator, became one of 14 original co-sponsors of the Medicare for All Act of 2019. Sponsored by Senator Sanders, the independent of Vermont, the bill would have established a national health insurance program administered by the Federal Department of Health and Human Services. Under the bill, the health insurance program would automatically cover all United States residents without deductibles, co-insurance, or co-payments. Private insurers could continue to operate, but only to offer supplemental coverage. Although PolitiFact gave its 2010 lie of the year to the Republican claims that the Affordable Care Act would be a governmental takeover, which it was not, a healthcare of healthcare, Sanders bill, which has subsequently reintroduce would go much farther than the Affordable Care Act. It would create an automatic federally run health insurance program for all Americans, which, by the way, every other developed nation has in place, which would mirror the socialized medicine systems in places such as the United Kingdom. Harris backed Medicare for All when she was preparing to run in the 2020 presidential primaries, and many of the candidates believe that Democratic-based voters wanted the most liberal positions possible. Besides Harris and Sanders, three other Democratic primary candidates signed on as co-sponsors: Senator Cory Booker of New Jersey, Kirsten Gillibrand of New York, and Elizabeth Warren of Massachusetts. In her 2019 campaign launch speech, Harris said, "I am running to declare once and for all that health care is a fundamental right, and we will deliver that right with Medicare for all." However, Medicare for All failed to gain steam with other Democrats. It has never advanced to a vote in the Senate. The bill's current House and Senate revisions have not been taken up by the committees after being introduced. After her 2020 candidacy ended, Harris focused instead on bolstering the Affordable Care Act as opposed to pushing for Medicare for All. So she never cut it. It didn't get the kind of support. Harris's previous support for Medicare for All with a private insurance option is suggestive of her values, but I doubt it will be a big emphasis for her in her current campaign. Larry Levitt, Executive Vice President of the Health Policy at KFF, a health policy research organization, told The Hill on July 22nd, "I think Harris will lean much more into the Biden-Harris record healthcare than policies she proposed in 2019. Let's read a little bit further. When asked if her plan would outlaw private health insurance for 180 million Americans, Harris replied, "Let's just eliminate all of it." In other words, the first part of Trump's statement is close to accurate. The Medicare for All bill Harris backed in 2019 would eliminate private health insurance, as it should, because we'll have 100% coverage for all Americans. Health insurance, except as supplemental coverage beyond what the governmental funded plan would cover. But the second part twists Harris' words. It comes from the Des Moines, Iowa town hall hosted by CNN's Jake Tapper when Harris was running for president in 2019. An audience member: "What is your solution to ensure people have access to quality health care at an affordable price? And does that solution involve cutting insurance companies as we know them out of the equation?" Harris's response: I believe the solution, and I actually feel very strongly about this, is that we need to have Medicare for all. That's the bottom line. Having Medicare for all means, moments later, Jake Tapper noted that Harris had co-sponsored Senator Sanders' Medicare for All. Jake Tapper: "I believe it will totally eliminate private insurance. So for people out there who like their insurance, they don't get to keep it." Harris: "Well, listen, the idea is that everyone gets access to medical care, and you don't have to go through the process of going through an insurance company, having to give them the approval or get an approval, going through the paperwork, all of that delay that they may require. Who of us has not had a situation where you've got to wait for approval, which we all have been through if you had to go through an insurance. I certainly have had to go through it. And the doctor says, well, I don't know if your insurance company is going to cover this. Let's eliminate all of that. Let's move on and let's have Medicare for all. Trump's version of Harris's comments ignores that statement by saying that we should have Medicare for all. We can eliminate the supplement because everybody will be covered. Let's eliminate all of that. Referred to the delay of paperwork from waiting for insurance companies' approvals, treatments. Also, Harris clarified it in the town hall, even if private insurances were eliminated, the idea is that everyone gets access to medical care from the federal plan. She wants abortions to the 8th and 9th month of pregnancy. This is another Trump assertion. That's fine with her right up to birth, and even after birth, the execution of babies. That's Donald Trump. Completely false. Willfully terminating a newborn's life is an infanticide and is illegal in every United States state. Harris hasn't publicly said how late in a pregnancy an abortion should be allowed, but she has publicly supported abortions under Roe v. Wade standard, which provided abortion access up to fetal viability. This is typically around 24 weeks of pregnancy. When the fetus can survive outside of the womb, medical experts say situations resulting in fetal death in the third trimester are rare. Less than 1% of abortions in the United States occur after 21 weeks. So the statement is completely false, and typically involve fatal fetal anomalies or life-threatening emergencies affecting the pregnant woman. For the fetus with very short life expectancies, doctors may induce labor and offer palliative care. Some families choose this option when facing diagnoses that limit their babies' survival to minutes or day after delivery. Some Republicans who have made claims similar to Trump's point to Democratic support of the Women's Health Protection Act of 2022, citing the bill's provision that say providers and patients have the right to perform and receive abortion services without certain limitations or requirements that would impede access. Anti-abortion advocates say the provisions in the bill, which fail to advance with a 49-51 vote in the Senate, would have created a loophole that eliminated any limits to abortions later in pregnancy. The Biden administration supported the e-bill. The director of KFS Women's Health Policy Program said the legislation would have allowed health providers to perform abortions without obstacles such as waiting periods, medically unnecessary tests, in-person visit. The bill would have allowed an abortion after viability when, in the good faith medical judgment of the treating healthcare provider, meaning the doctor, continuing of pregnancy would pose a risk to a pregnant patient's life or health. Now, those are the facts. Those are the facts that the Republicans and Donald Trump likes to misstate. So what she did say was Medicare for all, which is something that this country and every other developed nation provide for its citizens, that you can go and get health care anywhere in the country without having to be rejected. The Affordable Care Act prevents any health provider from denying someone access because of pre-existing conditions. Republicans voted against it. So if you have a pre-existing condition, such as if you have had cancer or some other illness, the Republicans' idea is that an insurance company should be able to reject you from getting health care, coverage for health care. The Affordable Care Act eliminates that. You didn't see insurance companies crying about the Affordable Care Act. When they were cut from taking 30% profits to saying that you're going to get 15 to 18% profits, the insurance companies didn't care. Why? Because they now got 80 million more new customers. Now, we still have 80 million people who are under insurance or without insurance in this country. So we have a long ways to go. But under the Trump administration and in Agenda 47, they want to eliminate the Affordable Care Act. They tried to eliminate it, was it 53 times or something like that? They tried to eliminate the Affordable Care Act. However, they didn't have a plan or an alternative. They just wanted to eliminate it so that they can give their breaks to their very wealthy friends, not taking care of people. Now, let me say this in these last few minutes that we have, because I'm going to go through some more of these policies. But I just want to reiterate to us that you and I, we have to work together. We have to make sure that we strengthen ourselves so that we can apply the pressure and the demands on the people who are in public office right now, like the mayor, aldermen, the Cook County Board commissioners, which I had to go down and give some public comments a week ago, this Monday. The 17 mayors, the commissioners, the state senators, the state reps, the governor, the lieutenant governor. We have to be in a position to make demands, to make them to deliver on things that they don't want to deliver on. This is what I'm trying to get us to understand. That is where our power is. It is in our collective, organized fashion. That is why I am working so hard to get us to understand why we have to build our own independent voting bloc. Because when we have our own independent voting bloc, that means that we have the numbers to determine whether somebody stays in office or whether we replace them in office. And when that threat is a viable threat, that is power that can influence public policy. Period. Period. And unless and until we do that, we don't have the kind of power that we should have. The reason why this president had to govern the way that he did is because black women made his candidacy, brought it back to life. On a national level, we here on a local level in Chicago and Cook County are in a very uncommon position as black people, not to be antithetical or anti anybody, but to make the people who are in office deliver equitably, to make our communities thrive, to invest in our communities at the level greater than they are investing in other communities. And if they are not willing to invest in our communities, then we have to put people in place who will. They have to know that we have the threat and that we have the wherewithal to actually carry that threat through. Not in a violent way, but in the democratic way. That is what you and I must do. And we must do that, and we must bring in the people who are in your trusted circles. So please make sure that you text 10x10 to 855-909-1385 so that you can get in the text alert, so that on Thursday that you receive the text alert and the Zoom link to get into the meeting Thursday night, 6:30, as we continue to build. That's all we're doing, is building. It's not requiring for you to put any money in. Right now, the capital is you and I connecting ourselves together. That these resources that are coming to our state, that we have a significant voice to make sure that they come to our communities, that they're invested in our communities, that they attract the companies to place their industries in our backyards so that our people can get those jobs that are 10, 15 minutes away from their home, so that you don't have to travel an hour and a half, or that you don't have to worry about some person who is unemployed and having a hard time has access to a job. We can eliminate and reduce the carnage that impacts our communities in under a decade. In Mississippi, in the poorest state in the union, they did it in under a decade. Our gross domestic product in Chicago is greater than all of Mississippi. So that means that we can do it in a much shorter period of time, as long as they focused and the concentrated effort was there. But the only way that that is going to happen, the only way that we're going to make those public officials respond at the level that we want them to respond, is that they have to know that we're in a position to determine their fate come the next election. We want them to deliver now. All of them to deliver for our communities. But in order for us to have that kind of strength, we have to come together. A great number of us. It's not going to be 100% of us, but if we put together, right here in the city of Chicago, 200,000 Black people in the voting block. Now, the goal is for us to get to 1 million people throughout the diaspora of the city of Chicago, the county of Cook, and the state of Illinois, so that we can impact all of the elections locally and statewide, as well as our federal districts. When we do that, when we are at that block, when we have those numbers, you will see mayors, public officials, aldermen, alderwomen, state reps, state senators, even the governor, lieutenant governors. They will be wanting an audience with us, because we now have the posture and we now have the strength, and we are organized to say that if you don't deliver for our communities in areas of education and economics, if there's not real investment there, if you're not improving our institutions, we have to get someone who will. And building at the numbers that we're building, we will have people from within the block that are interested in going to a public office that we could send to a public office that's going to work on behalf of our communities. Our communities should thrive just as well as anybody else's community. Anybody else's community. Our communities should be thriving. They're investing billions of dollars on the north side of Chicago. They invested billions of dollars in the South Loop over the last 15 years. They built practically a new small city. That has never happened on the south and west sides of Chicago for decades. For decades. When Ronald Reagan came into office, Ronald Reagan in the 50s, in the 60s, and in the 70s, 70% of all black employment was in labor. I'm going to say it again. In the 1950s, in the 1960s, and in the 1970s, 70% of all black employment in the city of Chicago was in labor. That means manufacturing. Ronald Reagan came into office and stopped enforcing the antitrust laws, which allowed for companies to become monopolies and move their jobs overseas. And the manufacturers closed here, and we lost 47,000 manufacturers to the tune of almost 20 million jobs across this country. Chicago was one of those cities that got hit the hardest. We went from 70% employment in labor down to 28% in just 6 years of Ronald Reagan being in office. And those policies have been dragging on us and dragging on us until this administration. Now, don't get me wrong. There were some good things that were done, great things that were done in the Obama administration, but there could have been greater things done, much greater. If he had used, which he had only 74 days, he had a supermajority. Only 74 days, because when Ted Kennedy got sick and died, the supermajority went away. So my point is, let's you and I, please, let's you and I contact your friends. Share this. Go on YouTube. Share it with your friends. You'll be able to go on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio to re-listen to this. I am going to continue to provide this information to us all the way up to the election. So look for programs I'm going to be doing throughout the week, additional programs, even some on the weekend for those people who can't get it during the week, and bringing you information and dispelling some of the myths that are put out there. But I am saying to you that our best chance is not supporting the other side. And the misinformation and the disinformation that I heard before, and just some of the just really I want to call it sophomoric talk. I don't even know if I can call it sophomoric talk. Just inaccurate, misinformed, inaccurate. This is the opportunity that we have for the mission and the progress to continue. So look at some of these other things. I have a few minutes left. I just want to read some of this other stuff over you. This came, again, the United States Treasury Department. This is the report of what has happened coming out of the Biden-Harris administration. The Biden-Harris administration, what their policies are doing for Black families in this country. They powered a historic economic recovery that created more than 2.6 million jobs for Black workers and have caused the lowest Black employment rate recorded. the lowest gap between black and white unemployment on record. No other administration has done it. As far as helping black families to start to build wealth, black wealth is up by 60%. Cut in half the number of black children living in poverty in 2021 through the American Rescue Plan's child tax credit expansion. The expansion provided breathing room to the families of over 9 million black children, began reversing decades of infrastructure disinvestment, which some of those things I went, including $4 billion to reconnect communities that were previously cut off from economic opportunities by building needed transportation infrastructure and underserved communities, including our communities. Connected an estimated 5.5 million black households to affordable high-speed internet. And I'm telling you that there are places around this country where people did not have access to internet, including some of our HBCUs. So these things are things that were done that are impacting black families. I'm going to continue going through this, giving you this information, making the case of why we have to play the long game. We have to play the long game, not a personality game, but we have to play the long game of the best interest that suits the best interest for black people. The alternative does not. They can't offer you any type of substance such as what I read to you. Not one. When you listen to those who are promoting the other person, you find out from them if they're offering any substance that you can go and verify. Just one policy. All right, listen, that's going to do it for me tonight. Thank you, Brother Earl. I want to find out how I can get a phone number, because I do want to have conversation back and forth with you. I want to be able to answer your question. Absolutely. Cancel student loan debt. Let me tell you something. People graduating with college, I only have about a minute. People graduating from college that had debt of $75,000, $80,000, $100,000 that no longer have that debt. You know what the advancement of the opportunity to build wealth, that means you can now go out because they have a job earning $80,000, $90,000, $100,000 or more. They can now go out and they can buy a home, which is an investment, and pay that home off while they're yet still young, which is the greatest investment that the average black family has. It's the most, it's where you start your wealth. That home becomes valued over the years, where you will be able to use that money to start a business, to send your children to college. These are the opportunities that Republicans have never done for black people. Never. If they did, if they had, then there would be an argument to support them. But there is no argument to support them. None whatsoever. All right, listen, that's going to do it for me this evening. I want to thank all of you for joining the program. Thank you. I think it's Denard Gibson. I want to thank you, Monique McGee, for joining me tonight. Carol Ann Elmore White, thank you for down. I think she's in Tennessee. Shelby Williams, thank you all for joining the program, and all of you who joined the program tonight. Thank you so much. Share the program, please. Go on YouTube and subscribe there. There's no cost to subscribe. Our new YouTube channel called Mark Wallace, The People's Show, every Monday night right here on intellectualradio.com from 7 o'clock until 9. Look forward to seeing you all again next week. Same time, same place. Good night. Stay informed.